right, I think we got everything we need here. Okay. And what I'm going to do, turn you towards the light. There we go. Right here. So one of the questions that I get most frequently asked is how to apply a base color and a highlight at the same time, which it shouldn't be that complicated, but it can be very intimidating if you're new to highlighting and you don't know how to control your sectioning, right? So the first thing that you want to do is make sure you have a clean roadmap of where you're going and know what your application is going to look like within each of those sections. That's going to make sure that that's going to be like bumpers for the application, right? So just cleaning up my sectioning here, I have a crown section and I have 2 temples, and then I have in quadrants 2 and 3, I have basically everything above the occipital here, above the parietal, sectioned off. I'm going to make this into smaller sections just for easier viewing, for easier watching, easier understanding, so I can control it. But there's nothing wrong with doing a whole section, a wide section here, once you understand foiling and you can do it with discipline. So this is just above the occipital, quadrant 2. I'm going to take my slice, flip it away. Pick up what I want. I'm going to do a standard pick up 1, drop 2. Okay, before I apply my foil, I'm taking my base color, just like that. Now you can take your foil. I prefer a long rat tail comb, so that way it is the width of the entire foil. I apply my pressure to the left and then pull my comb out to the right because I'm right-handed. It would be the opposite if you were left-handed. But that makes sure that the foil wraps around the head. Woo! I threw my tip brush on the ground. Love that. Okay. So we have our first foil applied. In fact, I'm going to use a fine metal clip instead because I prefer smaller clips for finer hair. It's less weight. In fact, you could do a back-to-back highlight, like bumper to bumper, and just paint what you leave out as far as the dropout with the weave pattern, but I'm actually going to drop a slice. Paint it. Mind you, the way that I folded my foils really impacts the fact that, or impacts the bleeding or the holidays that you'll leave on the scalp, which I'll show what and why real quick. So I always fold my foils in thirds, like these. Again, applying pressure from the left, wrapping it to the right. You can see how it curves around the head, nice and tight, up to the root. Just sneaking that lightener. My lightener is nice and thick and pasty, especially when I am doing a lot of up to the root work because I don't want it to bleed. This is an on-the-scalp lightener from Alpha Park called Easy Lift 7, or in the salon we nickname it BB7 because it's a bond building bleach. Up to 7 levels of lift, right? I make sure that my hair is totally encapsulated. This foil is nice and tight, close up to the scalp. So I have one fold right here. And every time I fold a foil, it's going to leave an imprint of the shape of the rat tail. And that creates a little bubble where the fold goes. So watch this. There's also another little bubble right here. Notice how I'm not pushing it down there. If I create tension here, it's gonna be right there. Rarely do I fold my foils all the way, because if I fold my foils like this, where are the gases and the oxidation or the liquidized lightener? Where's that gonna happen or eject from? It's gonna eject from the roots. So if possible, I leave my foils as such. I'm going to take another double slice here. Mind you, I'm slicing off the bottom. Very standard weave pattern. Drop the slice, right? Pick up one, leave two. Paint. So that ripple right there, that fold, is actually preventing the hair color from sinking down into those foils. And I'm not using a liquid permanent either. I'm using a creamy permanent. So that has some tact to it, right? So it's not gonna be drippy. It more or less stays in place. A lot of times I can do like a reverse balayage just with hands painting and no saran wrap, no foils, just by placing the saturated hair where it needs to be so it can process. And that demi is thick enough to kind of keep it in place. So again, in thirds, just like that. Once I get through the top of this quadrant here, I'm gonna go back through and paint my ends. That's just the way I like to do it. You can paint all the way through your ends as you're putting the base color on. That's really up to you. The base color that I'm using is Colorwear. It is a demi that covers gray 100%. It's a Colorwear. Oh my gosh, what did I use? A 7.1, 5.1, a 5.53, and a 7. All in equal parts. Obviously, I'm trying to make a 6. I do love that formula, actually. And that's mixed 1-to-1 with 20 volumes, so that way we can get that permanent element to it where it really resists fading, and it's going to cover gray at the same time. So, but mind you, especially in Alpha Parf, if you're using their demi line, as you move up in volume of developer, so does it increase the warmth factor, which is why I made a very green formula, because we're already canceling warmth out right now too. So notice how when I paint, a lot of times I'll paint side to side, or I'll do this S motion, because I really want to encapsulate the hair. Full saturation, a 360 saturation around the hair top with color. So I don't want there to be any holidays underneath, or when I go to lift the hair, see that it's not fully saturated or been penetrated with color. Notice how I put my thumb and my my middle finger on either side of the foil. So I'm pushing and I'm pulling at the same time. So it's push and pull. And that's going to keep it nice and tight to the scalp. And I'm just creeping that foil up, that lightener up, just tiny, tiny bit up to that folded ridge right there, that little ribbon, the imprint of my rat tail comb. And that's going to act as like bumpers to keep the lightener from pushing itself out if it over-oxidizes, it gets too hot. liquefies for some reason. And mind you, in my theory, if you've correctly prepped the hair and you've chosen the correct safe formula, your lightener should never liquidize itself or over-oxidize to the point where it gets so hot that it's gonna spill out the foil or burn the client. So that's a you problem. With my guest here, we actually did a CPR. She's a new guest with me. We did do a CPR to prep her before we started this service. I almost forgot my base color. There we go. So therefore, I know there's no lipid cement layer. There's no hard water, minerals, metallics hanging around on the hair shaft. There's no superficial layer of dye molecule on top of the hair shaft that I'm just going to have to break through with lightener. It's all taken itself off. I'm going to get a cleaner lift, a safer lift, a quicker lift, especially with her fine fabric. And lastly, the reason that I chose a demi for her fine fabric, this is one of the biggest things that I think that mistakes that stylists make, is we use a permanent color to cover gray on fine hair. And why is that a mistake? And I'm not saying for all color lines this is the way it works, but majority. I think it's a mistake because permanent color lives more in the cortex and medulla of the hair. Fine hair doesn't have a medulla, as we know, so it lacks the internal circumference to hold the appropriate dye molecule load, or the dye load, in the hair shaft, and it exposes so much of the underlying dominant pigments and that melanin in the hair shaft, and always turns a little bit brassy or warm, right? As opposed to a demi, which is going to live a little bit higher on the outer, not outer, but higher in the hair shaft, requiring less internal circumference for that deposition to really take place. And you're going to get more of an encapsulation of the color. And it's going to be a full coverage, like painting your nail, right? It's going to be full coverage. It's not living inside the nail. It's not living in, well, it does live inside the hair, but less. It's going to be like painting your nails with hair color. I'm going to leave this to marry to my quadrant 3 right here. That's about it. If you are one of my stylists, now is your time to grab your doll head and record yourself at least 2 to 3 minutes of your base color and highlight application at the same time, and then go ahead and send that to me so we can check off your career plan for this item. All right, happy hearing. I love you guys.